Right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of the TOS Podcast. Today we have Paul Krishnamurty, like a political betting expert, uh, snooker, cricket, darts, I think, tiddlywinks. I think
Oh,
a multi-talented man, and someone I've really enjoyed listening to in the past, and really wanted to get onto the pod. So I'm very honored to have him on with here. The podcast is sponsored very kindly by BetDex, a leading cryptocurrency exchange. Currently for October, there's a 0% commission on all trades, and very, very imminently soon there will be a market for the US election that you can also place your bets with as well. So first of all, good morning, Paul. How are you doing?
very well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. We've got lots to talk about. I mean, I could sort of have you here for hours, but unfortunately, I know you've got other things to do as well. But hopefully, we can cover a lot of stuff about the election. Give people more of an informed view about what might happen, and sort of crucially, as we are a betting podcast, where their money should be going. But kind of before that, maybe just a little bit of background for anyone who might not be familiar with your work. So maybe sort of take us through like a potted history of your sort of career to date and kind of what you're working on at the moment.
Okay, so I mean, I've been betting seriously since I was a kid, really, since about 13, 14. School bookie, went into the industry, worked in the shops. And then from about 2003, I was a professional gambler for 20 odd years. Uh, Made my main living for that. Started writing about it, mostly for Betfair, but lots of publications, golf tipping, cricket tipping, and particularly snooker tipping, and then particularly politics, because politics betting is something that's really particularly grown up this century. And that's become my main thing for the last, well, 10, 12 years. And for the last 3 years, my main role has been at betonline.ag. So I'm their political odds maker. You know, they hired me to massively expand their political content. I think we've got more markets than anyone else in the world now. We've really bet on anything. And I also do some other stuff for them, such as golf and cricket. But the main thing is politics. As I say, with the American election now, so I'm all over that. We've got countless markets that I've made up for that. You know, every Senate race, margin of victory, every state, loads of districts for the House of Representatives. Whenever there's a debate or a big speech, we've got dozens and dozens of props. You name it, we'll bet on it.
And in terms of the political betting, yeah, because like you say, you've kind of there's a like veered in that direction as because your main focus. How does it differ to sports betting in general in terms of sort of how you make those markets, how you assess those markets? I mean, presumably, like in terms of any betting market, there's similarities, but what is it specifically about political betting markets that make them interesting or unique?
Well, to be honest, I mean, look, I'd start from the point of view that I say that you can bet on anything. Absolutely anything in the world can be priced up. We could have a bet on the colour of the car that's going to go past my window next, you know? There is a price. And something like politics, to me personally, is a sort of life passion. I studied at a university. I've been in this game forever. Um, the beauty of politics for me, I think, is that it requires expertise. You know, I used to be a big football fan, right, when I was a kid. I can't be bothered with it now. I completely lost interest in football. The main reason I lost interest was that I couldn't win on it because there's nothing that I could know about football. And I used to know an absurd amount about football. But it didn't offer me any angle because millions and millions of other people knew the same, right? The bookies knew the same. There was no angle. So I got attracted to things I could bet on that where I would have an edge through my extra knowledge. And that I think is the big appeal of politics. Where I would say it really differs in a way from sport is data. Because, I think this is probably something that I would differ from a lot of political commentators now in that, you'll see around the election data scientists, Nate Silvers of this world, Nate Cohns, they're treated almost as like, gods. It's like, oh, well, they've just said someone's a 54% chance. That's a fact. It's just not. I'm not saying that what they do isn't useful. I'm not saying there isn't data. There is. Polls matter, right? There is data. But you can't compare this to sport where I know that if I'm betting on a cricket match, right, there's an average number of sixes at each ground. There's an average number of runs at each ground, etc. Or in a football match, and that you can get every statistic you want to do. You can't really do that with politics because every single election or every single leadership contest or political event is a unique standalone event. It has its own context. Even when you've got, say, the same characters, like say you've got Trump, right? I mean, we're going to get into this, but Trump's now in his third election. You can't absolutely transfer the data from those elections to this election because people are 4 years older, 8 years older. Things have happened. The world has changed. The dynamics have changed. The dynamics of the country has changed. The opponents have changed. And so it's, I would say that it's more of successfully predicting politics is as much qualitative as it is quantitative.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because on the one hand, if actually it might be something I can bring up on the screen as well. There's a lot of markets and liquidity in the betting markets. If, for example, we look at Polymarket and the amount of money on the actual election. So a general sort of consensus in the sports betting community is, again, sort of the more liquid a market is, the sharper it is, the more accurate it is. But then, in terms of sort of the money that comes into the election markets, for that you could make that argument in one sense, but then again, from what you're saying, there are people, let's say, saying as fact, Donald Trump is at 54%, 55%, but based on poll data, based on, specific sets of data. But there is a kind of margin for error there. And especially like looking back on the past, so on past elections where it's sort of like the markets, the political scientists, got it spectacularly wrong. What was it specifically, perhaps, at that time that happened? And do you think, the same thing could happen again in this election?
It could definitely happen again. So, multiple things. So first of all, I mean, so let's just say that 54%, 46% chance. It's actually all that tells you is what the views of the people who gamble are. That's really all it tells you. The distinction would be Manchester United play Manchester City. There's 10 minutes left in a game at Old Trafford, right? There is a way of calculating the correct percentage for each side and the prospect of how many goals there are going to be, etc., etc. It may, perhaps it won't come off because people will hit the crossbar or someone will go on a brilliant run and score a brilliant goal, or the goalkeeper will play a blind, or someone will get sent off. All of that. But the statistics at the start of it are correct, right? And they're based on long-term historic data. All this is based on is the sentiment of people who gamble, right? When it comes to the election, there's 3 weeks to go, we're speaking, right? Now, I'll guarantee you that 95% of the people who are going to vote in that election already decided who they're going to vote for. A lot of them would have already voted. They will be registered or not registered, etc. Right? All that this is doing is people predicting how those voters are going to behave. They're not going to be turned. That election is not going to be turned. It's very unlikely to be turned on some random event. Of course, something insane could happen in the last 3 weeks that changes things. But this is what we're doing here merely is trying to predict the future about something which is going to happen one way or another. The future is not that uncertain. We just don't know it. If you see what I'm saying. Right? Now, as for past election, well, so firstly, it has. I don't think actually that. I think that polls and political scientists and even betting markets get a bad rap for the occasional time when it's gone, right? I think that actually, if you look in the long term, favourites win an extraordinary amount of elections, and if
Yeah,
you look at
I think I read a stat saying it's only the last time Trump won was only the second time since like the in 100 years. I think that the favorite hadn't
yeah,
actually won.
and it doesn't really, and I don't. Well, I mean, well, okay, let's go a little shorter time frame because obviously it really was a tiny niche subject until this century. But let's just go with this century. Well, the only upsets in major elections that I can remember in terms of the main result: Trump in 2016, Leave in the 2016 EU referendum. Erdogan winning this year's Turkish election, that was an upset. I think the Liberals won a shock in Australia in the penultimate election. So they're the only ones in the main result. And I suppose it would be unfair not to say there have been situations like in 2015 in the UK when the Tories won a majority. That was a big underdog. Everyone thought it'd be a hung parliament. And when Corbyn got a hung parliament for Labour in 2017, when Theresa May was denied her majority, that was a big upset. But still, the party with the most seats in both cases did win. So it's not that they were that wrong. Now, as for the upsets, I actually think there's a far more logical explanation than. I mean, like I say, I think there's been a whole lot of magical thinking during this era. So, firstly, Trump and Brexit are fundamentally connected. Fundamentally the same global phenomenon backed by the same global forces, money trail, propaganda, etc. Right? And I think the point is that electorates in the UK and Britain and elsewhere, particularly here, have been fairly fixed for a long time. Whereas you could say that, mostly when I look at an election, I look at demographics. I think you can tell what a constituency is going to do by the demographics. So if you were going to say the 2010 election, 2005 election here, or in America in 2012, wasn't that hard. 2012 US election, good example. I believe the favourite won every single state in America. It was a really predictable election, despite supposedly being close. It's when Nate Silver made his reputation. It was absurd because everybody tipped that. Virtually everybody who was betting on that election bet on that result. And they went, oh, wow, Nate Silver got all the states right. It wasn't that hard to predict. But then what happened is, due to populism, which manifests itself in Trump and in Brexit, and also on the left, Corbyn, Bernie Sanders, is you see a kind of a transformation in the political system. And that means that you get a big realignment of voters, where you get a lot of people who used to vote left, right, swing to the right over a 5-year period, and a load of people who used to vote right swing to the left over a 5-year period. And demographics change. And so therefore it was very, very difficult for polling models or predictors to really accurately predict that. And I think what you get in 26, so let's take those two things. Well, I mean, 2016, personally, I backed Brexit heavily, won a lot of money on that. Then I lost a lot of money on Trump. So that was that election. In 2017, I won a lot of money on Corbyn getting the hung parliament. By 2019, having had 3 years to weigh all this up, right, to work out what exactly had happened, I thought it was very, very predictable. By the 2019 UK election, things have become supremely predictable. 2020 presidential election was very predictable. And since then, I've barely got anything wrong, right, because I'm dealing with a relatively predictable electorate. Now, as for 2024, we might see some change again, because you do see a lot of this unwinding. one of the really interesting things for me is that throughout the first sort of 7, 8 years of the Trump era, there seemed to be no movement, right? It was kind of like you're in one camp or the other. If you look at the polls now, Harris is doing much better amongst seniors than Biden did. She's doing much better amongst suburban voters, amongst white college-educated voters. About up to a fifth of Republicans are now voting for Harris. And yet, Trump's level, polls, more or less level. And therefore, what's happening there? What you're seeing is Trump's doing better amongst men. He's doing better amongst Hispanic voters. He's winning a slightly higher share of black voters. And so something's happening. There is a churn going on. And therefore, that might have some big unpredictable consequences in 3 weeks. Like certainly, if we're looking, we always look at key districts and say, well, this key district is going to show you how the electorate votes. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be different. I mean, that was really where I went wrong in 2016 in that I was in America and I'd already decided that places that this was going to be decided were, say, the Pennsylvania suburbs, Bucks County, Montgomery County. So I spent a lot of time there talking to people. And as it turned out, it wasn't them. That wasn't what happened. They weren't the key places. There was something different going on. So there were things I missed. So there is that possibility. There is always, and that goes back to what I said at the start. Every election is different. It is a different context. You can never know enough. There's no ultimately reliable set of statistics or data.
Yeah, so on that point as well, because I've got a graphic up here of just some of the potential swing states at the moment. I know like Michigan's been talked about a lot as well. But yeah, going back to your point, I think the assumption is that these are the kind of key areas, but often we see that actually there's other things that we wouldn't have predicted. In other places as well, which might affect it. So in regards to this election specifically, where do you think? I mean, on one sense, where do you think is going to be won? But more importantly, sort of where do you see the betting opportunities? So where do you think maybe there's something that's being overestimated or underestimated in the markets?
Well, I have to say, I mean, due to exactly what I was just saying about the uncertainty, this is the least confident I have ever been about betting an American election. Every American election, every British election I can ever remember, I've been really confident, whether I was right or I was wrong. For example, we were talking about 2012. I thought that was really easy. You had a lot of media commentators just saying, "Oh, it's too close to call. We can't call it." Right? Now, everyone's called it. Obama's winning this, right? This time, it genuinely is too close to call. It genuinely is. Look, what am I looking at? I think on the fundamentals, there's a lot going for Harris. A lot. Turnout. The fact that those key groups I was talking about, seniors, suburban voters, white college educated, she's doing well amongst them. I think she's got more money to spend, digital ad spend, that really matters. Much better ground game. Trump, however, whilst he is picking up new voters, definitely has a ceiling, and he struggles to get to 50% in any of these swing states. So in the absence of a third party, it's hard for him to win. But then at the same time, I think we're in a new. I'm slightly uncertain in that. I think we're in a new world. I think you look at crypto, for example. I mean, Trump's going to pick up a lot of crypto people who are crypto enthusiasts. I think that's an untapped pool of voters for him. I think that the effects of COVID and lockdown has flipped a lot of people over to that side, and a lot of the propaganda around it. Let's just take one example, bet noir of mine, Russell Brand. That Russell Brand, would conventionally have been seen as a leftist, but he's been proved quite clearly as a sort of pro-Russia, pro-Trump person who's now very much on the other side. Well, he'll take some people with him. He's got a big following, you know. So all of that makes me somewhat uncertain, but I would still say I would lean Harris because everything we know about elections says that the people who are swinging to her turn out and vote. They will be registered, they will turn out and vote. And you've also got, you know, what we have seen in the last few years over and over again is massive enthusiasm to vote for women over abortion. And we've seen some of that in the registration. You've seen Taylor Swift endorse Harris. You might get a lot of young women, a lot more young women voting. Those things, to me, take it over the edge. But as I say, compared to other elections, I'm not sticking my neck out.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because obviously at the moment the polls, various markets are giving Trump the edge, but you would say would your pick would be Harris, although not with with certainty. With 3 weeks to go now until the election, and I've kind of kept an eye on it, but only recently sort of started watching the media rounds of the two candidates. Well, maybe more specifically, sort of the media rounds that Kamala Harris has been doing this week, as Trump has been absent from some of them. But in terms of what you've said about voters pretty much already being decided, people will have their affiliations for the most part. Some people will have voted already. What could impact in the next 3 weeks? And again, looking back, comparing this to sports betting markets, but let's say what are these kind of extreme events that will swing the markets? Red card in a game, or torrential thunderstorm in a cricket match. Duckworth Lewis might have to be in. What kind of things? And historically, what kind of things could cause this kind of massive swing in the next 3 weeks? Or do you think it will be a case of just again, kind of slight movements, but no real major shift from now until election day?
Well, there hasn't. I mean, historically, there haven't been that many great shifts. Last time there wasn't. I don't think anything that happened late. 2016, one thing happened that I think was really pivotal, which was that the FBI reopened briefly what we now see was an open. A guy responsible was pleaded guilty of being convicted of working for Russia. But they reopened the investigation into Clinton's emails like 10 days before the election, right? And so what you then saw was suddenly you had two unpopular candidates, and one of them was more unpopular, and it was therefore swinging Clinton's way. Suddenly there was a little switch back. It's not a huge thing, but it was important, right? If you go back to 1980, going back a long way, but it's quite a famous incident. There was the Iranian hostage crisis, and that helped Reagan hugely. Now, I'd probably say that that's your area. If there's anything that's going to happen now, it's foreign policy. The world is on fire, right? You've got Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You've got Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, right? Deeply unstable Middle East. You saw yesterday North Korea, who are fighting with Russia in Ukraine now, and they blew up all the roads and bridges connecting them to South Korea yesterday. So, it feels like we're either in a world war or one's imminent. So if there's a big surprise and game changer, it would be that. And, Ken, that's not a subject. Who does that favour? I mean, I would say that would be a negative for a female candidate, probably. Trump positions himself as a strong man, right? That it probably would have an impact. But then on the other hand, there are other foreign policy factors in play here, like there are nearly a million Polish Americans and Ukrainian Americans in Pennsylvania, 900,000 in Michigan, 500,000 in Wisconsin. right? I can't believe if foreign policy is at the fore that's going to help Trump there. Then on the other hand, you've got Harris has a major problem in Michigan with Arab Americans, right? 66% Arab Americans in Michigan voted for Joe Biden, right? And the administration's support for Israel is a massive problem for them there. And Jill Stein is running on an anti-Israel ticket. So, Michigan is very vulnerable to me in that should really be a blue state, but I'm not sure it is. And that's critical to Harris's path to the presidency. That would be the main things. Other than that, well, look, Harris is doing a Fox News interview tomorrow, right? I'm very wary of thinking these set-piece events change much, but the debate did. The debate really did, right? Because she definitely got a bounce out of that, because I think she answered a lot of her critics there, and Trump losing that come off badly. She's taking a huge risk in going on Fox, a huge risk, right? At the same time, if she performs well in it, and she's talking to people who probably wouldn't listen to her otherwise, and she's addressed it. I mean, by doing that, I think it's very hard for anyone to keep this thing up that she doesn't do tough interviews when she's going to go on into the enemy territory, and she's going to say over and over again, Trump's running away from a debate. Trump ran away from doing a 60 Minutes interview. Maybe that helps her, but we really are talking marginal amounts here. I mean, I don't think that more than 5% of the electorate is persuadable. It's probably 3%, 2%, really. So it would need something really huge to happen.
I think it's an interesting point, because sometimes I observe these interviews that they're doing and wondering, for the most part they're preaching to the converted already, and sort of many people, like you said, would have made up their own minds. I think there's sort of going back to this week, what I found quite interesting as well was, when Barack Obama kind of addressed those men, and almost kind of it appeared like he was kind of admonishing and scolding them, and the kind of the negative reaction from that and the discussion points. But sometimes and it leads me on to sort of a more important question about again, if you're kind of following the media, depending on what sources you're watching, could kind of warp your view of what's actually happening. How do you, like, for yourself specifically, and also for, let's say, anyone else who's listening who wants to try and get a balance, as far as possible, like a balanced and impartial view of what's going on? Like, what can you kind of do, and how do you kind of, again, sort of distinguish what's noise and what's perhaps kind of hyperbole, or something that has an agenda to it, from an actual realistic view of what's going on? And sort of what's your approach, obviously, because the news cycle is 24/7, and you're following this all the time. So how do you go about doing your research and keeping up to date with things, and trying to keep a kind of level, sort of balanced assessment of what's going on?
Well, most broadly, is I think you have to treat this. You should take a scientific approach, an intellectual approach. Even if you study a social science, right, you have to. The answer is to try and disprove what you already think, right? If you have a view, and again, this can apply to any form of betting, right? If I'm going to say to you, I think that England are good value to win this Test match here today, try and debunk it, try and argue against it, right? And try and disprove, try and take yourself through that. And if you can't debunk it, if the arguments you're pushing against it don't work, then you've probably got a solid theory. Now, if you're looking at media, you're looking at news events, first of all, you've got to listen to everything to start with before you filter anything. You shouldn't dismiss anything. You should certainly listen to what both sides are saying, even if you disagree with it, even if you think it's nonsense. Right? And then you should critically assess it. You should critically assess that information, and then you get a feel for who can I rely upon, right? So there are a whole load of chancellors out there, right, in the political media space, a whole load of outlets who just push propaganda. They've always pushed propaganda, and they're wrong over and over again. And so if you fell for it once, okay, any mistake, fell for it twice, any mistake. But if you keep sticking with them and they keep putting you away, then stop listening to them. Write them off. Take that down. A good example of that would be polls. Now, there's a million polls out there, right? Some of these polls are paid for by the political parties. Some of them are amateurish, and some of them are really high quality data from very serious universities and polling companies who are determined to prove their worth by being right, by being top of the game. Now, therefore, use a pollster ranking system. 538 use that. They rank everything, right? If you go on their site, they've got, at least 300 listed. So, what you can see there is Rasmussen, who make a lot of noise, right? They're 290th or something. They're terrible, right? They're not a serious polling company. They're a propaganda outfit. So ignore them. But Siena College or Mary's College or Monmouth University or YouGov or Ipsos, just to name a few, they're all serious multinational, operations whose reputation comes from being right or more or less. And so, therefore, cut out, once you know that, once you've looked at your pollster rankings, just say stick to the top 10, stick to the top 20, and say everything else I'll ignore, and I'll work out my average from those 10 or those 20.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just bringing up 538 here. So I mean, that's really good advice for people to look at that for sure. And in terms of I mean, with this election in particular, perhaps obviously a unique case with Joe Biden stepping down, and Kamala Harris kind of entering sort of late in the cycle. But let's say for a conventional election, sort of how early do you start looking at, or rather sort of how early are the markets formed? And I guess in terms of, this is kind of a very long anti-post bet essentially. So how do you let's say prepare for this, or build up your position? Are there times or in other political events where you're looking to, let's say, sort of hedge out or kind of flip positions? But what's your kind of general approach to
It never stops.
something like that?
It never stops. It never stops. This market opened the second that Biden was inaugurated. Okay. And I'll tell you how the betting went, and I'll tell you how my positions went. So amazingly, here's the thing. Guess who was the favourite when it opened up? Kamala Harris. She was a 4-1 favourite, I believe, on Betfair. And I was playing that market quite quickly. I was laying, I laid her, I laid DeSantis, I laid Trump, right? So I got quite short odds, and that was a good position. Because Biden, I thought, Biden was a good price. He was like 8-9 to 1 at one point, early on. And I thought, I want to keep the incumbent on side. So that was okay. That bit worked. I was also laying loads of people I didn't think had any chance at all. Michelle Obama, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and that was okay. But the main positions for me were I went back and forth on Biden. I made some money on Biden a couple of times, trading him up and down. And then I went again and lost, obviously, because I had still had a live position when he went. But I got Harris at 89 to 1, 84 to 1,
Oh, wow.
49 to 1, because, when we were discussing last year, right, I thought Biden would be the nominee. I mean, hands up, I did not think that happened, right? But obviously it was an open question. Look, he's old, right? There's a question mark. And I was just adamant throughout many columns I've written for Betfair on this. It's like, if you're betting against this, don't look at anyone else. There's only one person who's going to replace him, be Harris, because of the process of this is that if Biden has to step down for whatever reason, they aren't going to have an open primary. It's not going to happen. It'll be carnage. You know, you've got when does a party who's in the White House have an open primary? It's very difficult because that person, whoever's running, is going to have to really defend the administration. And also, she is, the first black female vice president in a party that is very diverse and where black women are very, very numerous. And, their vote is very dependent on the black vote. I just can't see how someone is going to want to try and usurp the first black female vice president. It's a very risky position to take. And that's exactly what happened. As soon as the position became obvious that the position was going to become available, everybody just jumped in line and said, no, we support the administration. We think you've done a good job. She's the candidate and no one's going to oppose her. So that's what happened. So I've got a good position because of that. I did have some losers, like I say. I actually, the worst bet I had. So I kind of had a good position on Biden. I cashed out and took profit. But then going into the debate, two bets. One, I had a bet the night that Trump was convicted. I took Biden at 15-8, roughly. I thought that would come down. Didn't really come down. And then going into the debate, I backed him again at 9-4, thinking that all he's got to do is sort of have competent debate. Trump's never won a debate against a Democrat. Right, this will probably come down. And about 30 seconds into that debate, it was like, oh, no, this is a disaster. So go some back there. But the Harris positions were great. And so what I've done is I've basically got a big free bet. I've got no risk. Harris wins me a lot. And so I don't really intend to run that on the night. I would like her odds to come down a bit. I'd like to take the profit and go into the night clean, and I can play and running.
So essentially, because you've kind of built up your position, you have those opportunities already. But let's say for someone who's just looking at the election now, maybe wants to put a position on now, or even on the day and the night itself. How do you approach like the actual when results are coming in, on the day of the election? Do you see kind of, are there a lot of kind of overreactions? What kind of things would you be looking for, let's say, in the news cycle? And so what would be your general approach to, let's say, betting on the night?
Well, this is actually the best, probably the best. Here's what I say. This is why I'd like to close my position. I would like to go in without any stress at all. You do get, so let's just take, well, right, it's a good time to cut the noise out here, but in the again, you watch any of the news, the cable news stuff on election day. Oh my God, they don't have to talk. They can just go on and on and on, right? And it's like, we've just found the exit poll said 47% of people want change. What does that mean? What does that mean? Right, it's just such a vague nonsense, right? Ignore that crap. Listen to John King and the results board, and he's on the results board, and he's going, look, I want to see what they're doing in Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. So here's the result in 2020, right? Biden won by 50, whatever, exact votes. So that's what we're looking for. We need Biden. If Biden's winning, he wants to be on 60% or more. So I'm thinking, right, okay, there's my angle. Allegheny County. Let's watch Allegheny County, right? Let's ignore most of it. Let's just look at these key districts that are being identified by genuine bona fide experts, right, and telling you what Harris or Trump's going to need in that district. And that is how you can predict what's going on. Now, to take the last two elections, it's been incredible. I have actually done very well in running. 2016, I went in with a huge Clinton position, right? And I should have cashed out when she was like 8-1 on. I should have done, obviously, with hindsight. I didn't. It suddenly, very quickly, went from being 8-1 on, 5-1, suddenly like 4-6. in a matter of minutes because of some of these key districts were happening, right? And thankfully, I was quick and I managed to halve my loss by getting Trump at around even money average through watching those districts. Because believe me, the even money didn't last. It was like, it was literally at 3 a.m. it was 4-1 on Clinton. At 3:15 a.m. it was 4-6 Clinton. At 3:30 it was even money Trump. At 3:45 it was 5-1 on Trump. You had to be quick, right? And I got somehow. In 2020, that went all over the shop, and that was a classic overreaction because we knew in great detail that the Democrats were, due to the pandemic, particularly using mail-in ballots, encouraging their people to vote, but to mail in, right? And that was going to be counted afterwards. So what you had was Republican vote being counted first, and they're going, oh, well, like 40% of Pennsylvania's voted and Trump's 8% up, so that's a great. It doesn't mean anything. We knew that there was a whole load of votes yet to come. And so the market went from something like 4-9 Biden at the start to very quickly being even money, very quickly Trump being down to 1-4, I think. And then suddenly you got a big batch of votes from Pennsylvania and the 1-4 Trump went 1-4 Biden. So again, it was just following those counties, having an idea about what was needed in those counties. So firstly, as I say, the beauty of an American election is the way the scores come in. You look at the screen and it's like, well, okay, Trump is 2% up, but there's 63% reported, so there's 37% less. And, you see it changing live in running. We don't do that in Britain when we do elections. It's not as much fun. But that's the angle. If you know where the 37% are that still get to report, right, and you can predict how they're going to work, you might be able to predict the result, right? And the market's bound to overreact to all of these big dumps of votes, it's quite a consistent trend in American politics that because the rural vote tends to be Republican, they're in small counties, right? So they count quicker, So the first half of the vote tends to be Republican. Because when you're at that end bit, it's generally the big cities. It's generally going to be your Philadelphias and your Madisons and your Detroit, the critical places. So, yeah, expect them to swing.
Something for this election night, are there any sort of specifics? I mean, I've read sort of in the past there have been polls where there's sort of polling stations that have sort of run out of paper, potential issues with the machines. Also, like a wider issue, let's say in somewhere like in Florida with what's going on at the moment. So, are there any sort of particular states or sort of times of the night, during the cycle of results coming in that you'd be looking out for this time around?
Well, firstly, on the hurricane, I think this is actually a massively understated thing. I think that could be chaotic. Look, I mean, I wouldn't so much look at Florida because I think that's a safe Republican state, personally. If Harris is even competitive in Florida, she's won. I'd expect her to lose that by at least 5%, maybe 7%. North Carolina, though, is really interesting because that's close. It's very close. 1.3% last time. You've got all sorts of chaos on the ground. You've got Republican officials slamming like the conspiracy theories. You've got the Democrat governor leading the cleanup. It's got potential to go all over the place, and you're going to have problems with absentee ballots. So that is really a place to watch. That's really a place to keep an eye on. And the thing about North Carolina is really that should be Republican. So that is a potential game changer. If you were to sort of mess about the electoral college maths, we were saying about Michigan. I'm very worried about Michigan, Harris. they should be favourites there, but I think it's 50-50 and it's going to be difficult. If she wins North Carolina, that replaces Michigan, right? So that's the same number of electoral college votes. The other big thing moving forward, and this does depend who you're betting with and what the rules are. Now, Bet Online, we've made it clear we're settling on consensus of reporting by a series of prominent media outlets, right? So that we can get a winner, right? I think that after the election, there is, especially if Harris wins, if Harris is ahead, there's probably going to be chaos again, right? Republicans have stuffed election boards all over the country with election times. So people are committed to not certifying results. So that would be that could be very problematic. And you saw that last time. I mean, just as a guide, on Betfair, believe that the total traded was $1.7 billion last time. I think 2/3 of that came after the results were confirmed. It was just on will this be confirmed, and then of course you end up with January 6th. So all that is probably still to come.
Very, very interesting times. And then with the markets that you've been pricing and putting up, sort of how much kind of volume is there, and obviously are you expecting that that will kind of significantly increase?
Yeah, it's enormous. It's enormous. I just woke up this morning, another 50 grand bet on Harris. As I say, when I joined Bet Online, I was particularly tasked with expanding the political content. And they had a big election last time. It was a very big election. When we did the 2022 midterms, that was a real eye-opener because I didn't know how big that would be. But, I priced up every Senate race, about 50 House races, and, it just went crazy the last 2 weeks. I think we're taking more than that on anything. It's just non-stop betting.
So there's more on the political markets than, let's say, on sports, on NFL,
Everything. Yeah, I mean, like something like Arizona 01, first congressional district, Arizona third, Iowa first and third, or any of the Senate races. We will take serious money on them, and two-way money as well. It's not all, really is a big deal. And you can see it on Polymarket as well. You can see on that. As for the main event, though, I mean, really, we're taking well over 100 grand every day now, and it's only 3 weeks out. Could well get to 500,000 a day. It's really unprecedented. I mean, and this has been the story of these last 8 years. I knew that political betting was fast growing, right? And when I kind of particularly focused on it, I knew it was a big deal, getting bigger. But it's gone through the roof. It has gone through the roof. And an American election is the biggest election in the world. Everybody's following it. The sky's the limit, really. I wouldn't like to put a figure on how much will be traded, but it will be record-breaking again. It will certainly be record-breaking for us. You can see on Polymarket enormous numbers. You can see on Betfair enormous numbers. And as I say, it isn't just the main market; it's everything. It's everything. We've got parlays up. Each party to win Blue Wall or Sunbelt Sweep, taking a lot of money on that. You've got things like like I say, Senate races. I've just done for every state in the presidential election or the Senate. We've either got to win or the winning margin over under. That's a new thing. I mean, it wasn't until really we started doing it. I don't think anybody ever bet on what the over-under would be in Kansas, that kind of thing. And personally, if I was on the other side of the counter here and I was the gambler, That's what I'd be looking for. That's exactly what I'd be looking for. Finding a little angle like that in the state where I've got a strong view.
That was going to lead me on to my next question, actually. So, in terms of the profile of who's betting on what, obviously, the main market who's going to win, kind of attract sort of wide gamut of punters. But are you noticing sort of, let's say, sort of sharper punters on other sports are kind of looking at the side markets, the props, as you will. What's the kind of profile of people who are betting on the kind of less well known or kind of newer markets?
Oh, yes, I would say yes. It's pretty sharp, but it's also I don't think you can really generalise because it is growing fast, and I think one of the so I mean on a broad point about political betting, like I say, when I started doing this, it was kind of like, well, this is something that is a really sharp guide to what's going to happen, right? Because it was quite a niche thing. I don't think it is anymore. I think it's now a mass event like a sport. And so, just as the people who bet on the Super Bowl or the FA Cup or the Champions League or whatever are, maybe the majority of them are just partisans. They're backing their team, right? So you might get a lot of that. I think in a lot of these state markets and the two-way stuff, you might well just get people who from Kansas, Iowa, whatever, say, no, I want to back my Republican candidate or my Democrat candidate, right? So it is a wide range.
Do you think punters have that similar mentality then, sort of like to, sort of backing their home team every week? Because I don't know, mate, again, my sort of like a, ignorant assumption is that when it comes to politics, maybe there's perhaps slightly it's one thing to kind of have that belief that your side's going to win, but actually sort of the people putting money down in the markets where the money talks in political betting in my mind would seem like a little bit sharper, but again that might be a mistaken assumption. So it's quite interesting that you say that there are punters out there who regardless will again, back Republican or Democrat or their representative, regardless, they're not being price sensitive in that sense.
Well, also, it gets back to what we were talking about before, about accurate sources, about the environment now. We used to live in that era when political betting got this reputation as being this tremendous guide. We had a limited number of sources, right? There was a general agreement about facts. If we go back and say, I do think that era, Trump, Brexit, populism, Russian interference, all of that, that's when it changed. That is when it all changed. Prior to that, there was a level of agreement about facts and such forth. And now anything goes. Look at the hurricane. I mean, look, I was reading an incredible survey yesterday on CBS about the hurricane. And, obviously there's a whole load of disinformation out there about how FEMA are giving money to the illegal immigrants instead of giving it to the people who need it on the ground and such forth. And it's just ludicrous propaganda. But you had 90% of one side think it's propaganda and 83% the other think it's true. So if that's the news environment, and that's just one issue, you could take any issue under the sun, right? There is that level of dispute about the truth now. Well, that's probably going to encourage some people to say, well, I just read this on this website and I have invested emotionally in that website. I believe it. So I'm going to put my money down. It's going to have that same partisan effect that football or any sport has. And in fact, going back where we started again, the data in this, in politics, the actual electoral data that would inform a bet is far less, concrete than it is for sport.
Yeah, I guess it's the kind of nature of again, like an election coming around every 4 years. We have by-elections and things like that, but it's kind of in my mind, akin to betting on a World Cup or a Euros. There's big gaps in between. One question I wanted to ask, I don't know. I suppose it could be a long answer, but at the moment, to my mind, things are quite polarized. I mean, there's always a level of polarization in every election, and red or blue or whatever color you pin your colors to the mast. But in terms of approaching it from betting angles, do you would you say a very kind of highly polarized climate is actually a good thing for finding angles? Does it distort the kind of the true data and what's there, or does it kind of actually create more problems and complicates your assessment of what's going on?
Uh, I always no, I'd say it helps someone like me. It helps because I've got a lot of deep knowledge on it, and so I'm much like let's just take the last UK election. Uh, that was my best ever British election, and the reason it was for me was there were so many parties. There were so many parties, and there was such like general dissatisfaction and uncertainty, if you like. And to me, that was beautiful because what that meant is I could look at all 650 constituencies and I've got a very clear idea in my mind as to who the supporters of each party are, what their demographics are, right? And I can find out what numbers they are in each constituency. And it was quite easy to predict. And the major thing there would be reform, like a new party, populist right party. And, again, the demographics of reform are quite predictable, right? So you could roughly tell how they were going to fare in each constituency and what the impact on the maths would be. So I found that very, very good. I don't think that polarisation is good for society at all. I think it's terrible. I think we're very, very worrying, dark times. But betting-wise, I can't really complain, if I'm honest.
And yeah, going on that because it, everyone has their own sort of political leanings. So when there's obviously been times, I presume, where uh, you bet on someone or on a party that don't necessarily reflect your political views. Not that we don't have to share our political views, and that's not the point of the podcast. But at the same time, it's one thing to kind of try to remove your bias, for me, like as a Spurs fan, from trying to analyze and sort of preview their games, but for something like politics, again, sort of how you remove, will there always be an element of some kind of bias towards your political leanings that will color the lens slightly, and also kind of how you feel kind of betting, let's say, against someone who might actually sort of represent your principles better.
Well, that's where you go. I go back to what I was saying. That's why you have to treat it like in the scientific process, like an intellectual process, because it's absolutely right. Anybody who tells you they are politically neutral, they're lying. They're just lying. It doesn't matter. Even like the most impressively politically neutral media outlet, right? Even those who try the most to do it, those people still vote a certain way. They have certain prejudices. They can't help it. It's the nature of the game, right? So therefore, if you're trying to predict something, if you're trying to bet on something, you have to challenge it. You have to challenge your own assumption about that. Is that true? Is that, don't assume people are like me. Now, to talk betting on against your thing, well, I don't hide my politics at all. I think anyone who sees my Twitter account could tell me what side I'm on. Now, last election, I'm no Tory. I don't think anyone's ever mistaken me for a Tory. I did beautifully betting on the Tories. Because, again, you had a situation where you were like, they're going to have a bad night. Everybody's down on them. Everybody's talking, they're going to get no seats. They're going to get wiped out, blah, blah, blah. Right? They're not going to get wiped. They're not going to get no seats. That's just stupid, right? So I was like, right, well, okay, I'm going to identify the 100 seats or something, or 80 seats that they are going to get, right? And I'm going to bet on as many of them as I can. And I bet on... well, like I say, I didn't bet on all of them, not because I didn't have time to go around betting shops for that long doing it, but I spent a couple of days when I was back in the UK just going around, and I backed, I think, about 27 Conservative constituencies, right? And I won 25 of them, right? And that's despite them having a terrible night, right? So that's fine. Again, I personally think that's the best way to do it. That's the best way to do it. You should try and back all the parties, right? It's not so easy in an American election because the states are so one-sided, right? So you can't do it so much. But I'll use the British election as a better example. You've got 650 constituencies. I'm going to try and predict all 650, and I'm going to try and find my best 30 Conservative bets, my best 30 Labour bets, my best 20 Lib Dem bets, my best 10 Reform bets, or whatever, right? I put all of them on, and in theory, they could all win, right? You could just, because, I'm tipping 650 seats, right? And they're all going to win some seats. And that's pretty much what happened. They didn't all win, but out of about 70 seats or something that I backed, probably won 60, 62 of them.
And so, one other thing I wanted to ask, I wish I could have you on for longer, but kind of in the process of wrapping up now. But and you sort of spend a lot of time abroad, so you're kind of in and out of the UK. Would you say that like informs some of your perspective? Would you say there's an advantage to that? Would you say there's things that maybe that if you were in the UK for longer, you maybe are missing out on, or does it not really make a difference in terms of the digital age that we're in and the access to information that you can get now?
Yeah, I think the latter. If anything, it probably helps, because I think when we talk about bias, the easiest way to slip into bias is to be in a social environment where that bias is evident, right? Because no one can escape their physical environment, right? And if you're in an office where 80% of people are saying something, you're probably going to get caught up with it. It's harder to challenge it. Whereas online, again, it's a danger, but if you're making the point of not getting caught in the bubble, it's the echo chamber, I think that's a lot easier. So I've been abroad for a few years, and I think the evidence betting wise would say it's helped me on British politics, because I've had a brilliant run on British politics, better than I have in the past. I think if I go through that, we've had a few elections in Britain. So I left Britain in 2021 full time, right? I'm in there half the year with 4 months, right? But 2015 was a bad election that I came out level, fortunately, just because I gambled sensibly and strategically, because I was mild out. 2017 was a brilliant election, but then it probably went with what I wanted to happen, so maybe that was luck to an extent. 2019 was a brilliant election, which didn't go my way as what I wanted, but so maybe I got it right then. But since then, since I've been abroad, I've been really good with it. And again, historically, I've done better on American elections than I have British elections, and I only spent 1 year of my life in it. So maybe distance helps,
So the edge is sort of sunshine and
yeah. And distance, like I said, you can get a bit of distance if you're following. If it's not in your face every day,
yeah,
sort of searching stuff out. Yeah, I've had some amazing bets on foreign elections on countries that I've never ever been to, right? And I think that probably helps, because I'm just looking for distance. I'm not personally invested too much, It's easy to form an opinion.
And on that topic, are there any, because obviously I would love to have you back. Are there any other elections, any other sort of political events, like, coming up in 2025 that you'd be sort of looking at, or you've already started looking at that, people can?
Yeah, there are some elections. There's going to be Canada. There's going to be Germany. Let's turn those two. There are others, but they're the big two. I think in both cases, the ruling party is in massive trouble. Does very much look like Conservatives win in Canada. But the good thing about Canada is, again, similar to the British system, you can bet on seat totals, you can bet on individual districts, individual regions. So that'll be my angle there, right? Germany is complicated because it's all coalitions, it's proportional representation. But again, I haven't. The only strong opinion I would have at the moment is simply that I don't even think Trudeau will run. I think Canada's it's finished. It's over there in Canada, and I think that the SPD in Germany are also in major trouble. So you're probably looking at a CDU government, but you've got the far right also doing very well there. So very interesting times. And it's going to be, for me, that's going to be all about probably predicting the right coalition.
Paul, honestly, this has been sort of fascinating. I've learned a lot from this conversation. But the last question I have for you is, our podcast is brought, in association with BetDex, and it's kind of an interesting development in the betting industry and in terms of competing with other exchanges that are out there as well. What's your thoughts? I know we had a sort of brief discussion, over Twitter before the podcast, just about the potential of an exchange like BetDex and betting using cryptocurrency. What do you see as the kind of the future of the betting exchanges? How BetDex kind of incorporate itself in there and grow from here, and your sort of general thoughts on this space?
Yeah, I'm massively enthusiastic about it all. I've always wanted a global exchange. I mean, be clear that politics is my main thing that I do professionally, journalistically as well. But my real betting passion is cricket. I bet on cricket every day. I love cricket. I've bet on cricket every day pretty much for the last 25 years. I'll never stop. And one of the real frustrating things of recent years was how that kind of fell away a bit on Betfair. So I'm hoping that will expand, and I'm sure that applies to everything. It's like the same with elections. Elections aren't it's virtually it's only slightly legal at all in America to bet on elections. It's very restricted. So indeed, being global firms like Bet Online, like BetDex, like Polymarket, I think that's where the future is. That's where the future is, because that's where people who want to have a bet can come together and get past very silly restrictions.
Oh, absolutely. I have some good news for you, actually. I've just seen on the BetDex site, Sri Lanka and West Indies are up there, the T20 today. Nothing in the market at the moment, but maybe there's time for people to start seeing the market. But absolutely, because that's kind of a huge growth area, and the offering is kind of expanding all of the time. From what I've seen is again a lot of competitive odds on the football and on the tennis as well. So hopefully that will kind of continue, and that growth will carry on. Paul, it's been brilliant chatting to you. Really insightful, and I hope people will get a lot out of this, and really begin to sort of understand the betting markets around sort of political markets and all the things that go into this election. And in terms of sort of where people can follow yourself, see what you're up to, so they can find you on Twitter, and you write kind of various columns. So there is anywhere else that you want to sort of people?
Well, Twitter at Paul Mossy. My website, politicalgambler.com, is going to be updated at last again this week. I got hacked, so it got taken out.
Okay.
And my stuff's going up there again, and I'm going mostly writing on there. There's a Substack which I will link on the site. I can't tell you. I think it's at Political Gambler, but I could be That will be up there in a few days. So, but yeah, Twitter and website and Substack.
Okay, brilliant. And so I'll put all those links, in the description below the video. Also a link to BetDex, again, so 0% for October, on a commission on all markets. And Paul, thank you very, very much for this. It's been fantastic. Really, really appreciate your time, and would love to have you back on the podcast again. So,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
thanks for having me on, Neil.